Hi, my name is Imelda Jimenez Lamar, and I'm a product photography coach helping handmade sellers learn how to shoot product photos that's online. And today I want to share with you a couple tips, a couple perspectives, insights about product photography that you may not know as a maker, but you probably should. So when I started practicing product photography again, it was quite a learning experience, and still is. It's always a work in progress for me when it comes to photography. And there were some things that I didn't really realize or didn't dawn on me until recently that I thought, this would have been really good to know when I was first starting out photographing products, and I think makers really should know. There are also things that are really not discussed in the maker community when it comes to photographing products that I think would just be really helpful, that would really help you hopefully understand that you're not alone, and that it's not that that you're doing something wrong. It's just it doesn't work for you and like maybe what you're photographing. So I'll get a little more specific as I talk about some of these perspectives. So the first thing that I think is really important to know as a maker is that there is no one size fits all setup when it comes to product photography. And I didn't really understand this until recently, even though it was sort of right in front of me. And so often when somebody is struggling to photograph their products, or they're just learning how to photograph their products, the number one suggestion is always to use natural light, to photograph next to a window on like a really nice sunny day, and you should be able to get really good photos, which will work for a lot of products, but it doesn't work for all products. And if it's not working for you, you may be one of those people. The other common suggestion when it comes to setups for makers is to use a light box or a light tent. And if you've been following me or you know me, you may know that I really don't like light boxes and light tents because they're very confining and allow zero flexibility for you to photograph products. And I think that's the thing, is that a lot of makers, because other makers have said, hey, this worked really great for my product, they don't know how light interacts with your product, which I will get to in my next point. And it may totally make your product look bad in your photos. And it's because you're getting light from all different directions. You can't really control the perspective that you're photographing your product. Like you just put your product in the box and you take a picture and that's it. Which product photography is a lot more involved than that. But I understand that there are makers out there who like the convenience and the ease of it, but it's not really going to work for everybody. But my 2 cents when it comes to setups is that if you're going to start taking product photos, I do suggest as your starting setup to be next to a window on a nice sunny day and work from there. Save your money and don't buy the light box, because the clients that I've spoken to, or the things I've seen from the Etsy forum and all of that, is there's so much frustration with the light box, and there's a good reason for that. So save your money, and do a setup next to a window and start from there. It's a good foundation because it allows you so much freedom to change the angle that you're photographing your product. It allows you to change the angle that your light source, which is probably going to be the sun, is going to be hitting your product, and you can like shift the whole setup. And if you later on want to get studio light, well, then you have the space and the freedom to put the light wherever you want. It's just hands down going to be so much better. But it takes a little bit more work, but your results are going to be so much better than when you're using a light box. So I mentioned a little bit about light and understanding how your product interacts with it. So that brings me to my next point, which is that one of the key things I think every maker should really understand when they're photographing their products is understanding how light interacts with their product. There are thousands and bazillions of products out there, and they all behave differently when light hits it. So this is why I emphasize understanding light, playing with light when you're photographing your products, because light is essential when you're photographing your products and just photography in general, right? So it's really important to understand what is light doing and how is it changing the way your product looks. If you don't understand this, it's going to make photographing your products maybe a little more challenging for you. But if you take the time and really observe it, it's going to make it a little bit easier, so you know what kind of setup you're going to need to do, where the angle of light should be hitting your product, and so on. And I do have a blog post where I do talk about this, that shares exercises where you can really start to understand how light changes the way your product looks, and a couple of other things. So I'll be sure to, leave a link or whatever on this video. And I think I also have a video where I share with you an exercise that you can do, which is really easy and will kind of help you start looking at light a little bit differently. But when you think about light and how it interacts with products, a really good example might be if you're photographing a greeting card. If you're photographing a greeting card in next to a window on a sunny day, you're probably going to get a pretty good photo. If you're photographing a glass vase next to a window, it might be a little bit trickier because light is going through the product, right? Because glass is transparent and it's also reflective. So when light hits it, you're going to get little highlights here and there. And that is something else you kind of really need to consider. And I know this happens even with clients. Like I have clients who are, photographing products and they may have like a matte finish, so it's pretty easy to take photos. But then they have products that might have a glossy or shiny finish, and then that kind of makes things a little more tricky. So in that instance, you probably have to change up your setup so that you're able to see that your product is shiny and has that glossy finish and doesn't show up matte. And I know that's like a little bit more information than you maybe need to know, but these are the things you have to take into consideration. So if you're photographing that glass vase, light's going through it. So you need to make sure that when you're photographing it, that you're able to see the glass base and you can see the shape of it and things aren't going invisible, which can happen with glass. But that is a very different setup than if you're photographing the greeting card, because light doesn't really go through that, right? So these are things to really remember when you're photographing your products and understanding what light is doing to it, because that will help dictate what you're doing. And this is why it's really important to get the lighting down when you are first learning product photography, especially if you don't like how your photos are coming out. Your lighting is going to make the biggest difference apart from your background, and it can just transform your image to another level. The other thing that I don't see a lot of emphasis on, and the reality when it comes to photographing products, is that you're going to really need to practice. Like, you're going to really seriously need to practice. If you want to improve your photos, you really need to dedicate time to practice photographing your work. Because if you're just photographing every other month for like an hour, and it's only when you are needing to list a product online, that's not really practice. Practice means you are setting time each week to practice the lighting, to practice different backgrounds, to practice changing the angle that you're photographing your products, and so on. And when you start doing this, this will help you make a lot of progress in your photos and improving the way they look. Because there's no way I would have got to where I am now, not that I'm super far, but I wouldn't have been able to see my images improve had I not set time each week or a few times a month to practice photographing my products, or just like different types of products, right? Because the more variety, the different things that you're photographing, the more insight you understand in how to properly light and how to photograph different things, which is really interesting, kind of fun. There's definitely some challenges for sure, but practicing is really was going to help you see that improvement in your product photos. The other thing that doesn't get talked about very much either is the importance of experimentation. Because if you keep doing the same thing, you have the same setup, you're photographing from the same angles and so on, you're going to probably just keep getting the same type of photos, right? So if you want to get different results, you need to start doing different things. This means changing your background, changing the angle that your light is hitting your product. That means, you know, changing things up with what perspective you're shooting your products from and so on. And you have to be willing to do that, because when you do that, just like with practice, the more you're going to be able to understand, oh, maybe the light shouldn't be coming from this angle because my product is darker, or it doesn't look as good as when the light was hitting it from this angle, or it looks better when I photograph it from this angle, or this background looks better. When you experiment, that helps you dial in more about what works for your product photos, and just really, it just helps you so much. So those are 4 things that I really wish were talked about more in the maker community, and it could be just there's not that awareness, but I want to help you understand what it's going to take for you to really improve your photos and not sugarcoat it. Because at the end of the day, as much as we all would love shortcuts in life and would just love to, you know, hit a button and then everything just be perfect, what we want, it's not the reality. And while there are things in product photography that do help make the process of photographing and editing easier, there's no shortcut to learning how to take a really good, solid photo. And that means figuring out what setup works best for your product, and understanding how light interacts with it, being able to experiment and try new things to see if that makes your images better or worse, and practicing. Like, all of those things can really help you make the progress that you're looking for to improve your photos. So let me know what your thoughts are. Do you do any of these things? Has it dawned on you that maybe your setup is the problem and it doesn't work for your product, for your particular products? Let me know. And if you're somebody who is looking for some more accountability, for more guidance, and you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I do offer that, and I will leave a link or something wherever you're watching this. If you're watching this on my website, you can always contact me at sunsetshutterbug.com, or if you follow me on social media, you can always send me a DM there and let me know that you'd like to chat more. Otherwise, I hope this was a great video for you. Feel free to share with other makers who may be struggling with their photography, and maybe some of these things might help them understand maybe why it's not working, and help them be guided to other solutions. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.